My name is Anna. 5 years ago, I made a post asking strangers for courage and a plan. I was in love with my best friend. Not casually, but the kind of love that rewires your sleep and frames your mornings. You know the type. Every smile feels like a promise, and every silence like a plot. I thought that if I could be supportive, if I could show up and be kind, the universe might correct and place him in my arms. Instead, I learned how dangerous hope can be when paired with a brittle life. When I look back, I see how I mistook attention for intention. I don't tell this to seek sympathy. I tell it because there is a larger movement that happens in the middle of such stories. A collapse, and then a rebuild. And that rebuild, though slow and often humiliating, is the most important arc. If you are listening because you are holding out for someone who doesn't return your love, know this. The work begins not when you get their attention, but when you decide to claim your attention for yourself.
He and I had been friends for a long time. People don't become codependent in a week. They drift into it in small increments. He remembered what I liked without asking. He knew the song that would quiet me, the joke that would make me forget the worst day. That kind of intimacy becomes its own currency. I began to assign value to small things he did, a hand that lingered half a breath longer at the back, a message that arrived just as I was about to fall asleep, a laugh that felt private. It was intoxicating. When he started talking about others, people he found interesting, people he thought could be dates, I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on my face. I wanted him to choose me. I wanted him to make a mistake in my favor. And I justified the waiting as patience. It was not patience. It was a slow erosion of my sense of self.
There is a perverse pleasure in pining. The high of a tiny reciprocal gesture can be as profound as heartbreak. You learn to measure your worth by the length of his replies, the warmth in his tone, whether he remembers small facts about you. 2 years of that is a long time. 2 years of measuring your days by the returning of someone else's attention. You start to cultivate the skill of moving through life like a moon around a planet, constantly rotated by their pole. I grew thin. I grew hungry on approval. When the university pressures mounted, when organizers asked too much of me for too little support, the strain split me open. I tried to keep everything afloat, the event planning, the thesis, my friendships, my secret hunger. But the cracks widened. Burnout came like a fog that stuck to my bones.
Burnout obscures your choices. I stopped answering when friends called, not because I disliked them, but because being social felt like a performance I couldn't sustain. I started drinking to quiet the noise in my head. At first, it was a few glasses to calm a chewed-up night. Then it became habit, a way to sleep, a way to be looser, a way to feel that my grief had company. Paranoia soon followed. I'd stare at a device and invent conspiracies. Did someone hide a listening device in the walls? Was the landlord tracking my comings and goings? These thoughts are humiliating to admit, but they are part of the trajectory. Addiction and paranoia make the world feel like a hall of mirrors where everyone else is moving in different directions while you remain stuck in the glass. My life compressed into small rituals: drink, sleep, cry, pretend.
I moved back home with my dad because I could not keep juggling rent and a collapsing life. The apartment that had once seemed like a private kingdom started to feel like a stage where my mistakes performed themselves on repeat. Returning to the farm was oddly healing. My dad made coffee that didn't need to be captioned. He didn't ask about my nights excessively. He let me refold into a human being at my own pace. I spent months doing extremely small things: walking, sleeping, going to rehab, talking to a therapist who never seemed surprised by the depths of my shame. That consistency, The same clinician showing up and listening to the same story as if it were important became the scaffolding I needed. He called a few times early on. I didn't answer. That silence haunted me even more than those years of obsession. Silence is not free. It cuts people off from one another. By December, when he messaged asking if we could meet, I said yes and then didn't follow through. I was avoiding humiliation and also protecting myself from the thin hope I could not afford. The relationship with him dissolved not with fireworks, but with silence and missed appointments. If I had to place blame, I'd start with the illness. Addiction and depression both make you unreliable, but I also have to accept responsibility for the doors I closed. I read our old messages later, amazed at how long a human could be in someone else's orbit without the orbit closing into a more intimate arrangement. Recovery looks very unromantic. It is appointments, paperwork, mornings you have to drag yourself into. You go to counseling and name things you had hidden from yourself, that you had chased validation in a destructive way, that you'd put someone's possibility over your own life. I learned to separate the man from the idea. It sounds cliché, but it's true. An illusion cannot hold you. When I stopped giving him the starring role in my internal narrative, I began to have room for other things, for work, for rest, for very small joys. I stayed sober. I found a schedule that didn't burn me out. I started to sleep better. Little things gained back their color. A sunny walk, a book you read without thinking of him.
There is a curious stage in healing where you realize that some of what you felt during your obsession were not real feelings, but rehearsed expectations. You practiced feeling in specific ways, jealousy at a glance, hope at a certain phrase. When you remove the mirror and see what is left, you might find your love was mostly a series of responses you'd taught yourself. That realization hurt for a while. It felt like losing something twice, losing him and also losing the imagined version of what you had. But it was also a freedom. Freeing yourself from constructed desires allows you to decide on new, more nourishing wants.
My friends were patient to a degree, and then some gave up. That loss taught me that relationships are reciprocal in a way I had ignored. Friendship is not simply being present when it is convenient. It is the slow work of showing up. And I had not been showing up. I went to their apartments and made tea and listened, now, as a practice. I learned to apologize without expectation of absolution. I discovered that people will forgive if you are honest and consistent long enough. I also learned that some bridges, once burned, are not rebuilt, and that is part of living. There are things we accept as cost when we are sick. People who leave, jobs that require you to step back, chances that evaporate. You grieve those losses the way you grieve a death. Perhaps the most humiliating part of the story was how my addiction let other people reinterpret my actions. Someone would say I had been flirting. Someone else would say I had wanted it. People chose a narrative that fit their discomfort. When your life is messy, the world prefers tidy explanations. She wanted affection. She slept around. That simple logic is poisonous. I spent months correcting others who'd already made up their minds, but the truth doesn't always travel quickly. Reputation accrues the quickest in the absence of explanation. Rumor slides into gaps you leave open. So I decided, slowly and carefully, to gather scraps of evidence for my own story. Messages, dates, receipts, notes from friends who'd noticed things. I did not do it to incite revenge. I did it to make sure my version would exist when needed. When I finally pieced together the timeline of my collapse, I realized how many elements aligned to make it plausible. A friend who was often around when my best friend was not. Nights out where I drank too much. The event I organized that pushed me over. I cannot say the other person intended every harm. People make bad calls. Context matters. But patterns do not lie. They reveal who does what when they think no one is watching. When you see a pattern, small things aligning into harm, you must treat it like a fact and not a mood. That change of perspective moved me from passive shame into active clarity. The slow reclamation of my life included a pragmatic part. I stopped reaching out. I stopped checking their social feeds. I stopped rehearsing explanations in my head. When I chose to stop, the world did not immediately become painless, but the momentum of healing is real. Steps forward are small: an hour of work without distraction, a week sober, a friend who replies with patience. The rhythm of tiny achievements rewired my days, and eventually, those tiny achievements stacked into something bigger: a stable job, a partner who reciprocated love, a life that felt like something I actively shaped rather than survived. Meeting someone new changed my perspective, not because they replaced what I lost, but because they offered a different language for companionship. This new person wanted to show up. He wanted to work through small inconveniences, to go to a museum, to argue playfully about pizza choices. The difference was not grandeur, but steadiness. In that steadiness, I learned how one might love a person who loves you back, not with the feverish hunger of obsession, but with the patient building of a life. I stopped marking my worth by how often someone answered me and began to mark it by how often I did things that made me proud. There are moments I will carry forever, not because they were romantic, but because they were small acts of dignity. Recycling a set of old apology letters I wrote and then tore up felt like a ceremony. I no longer needed the paper to validate my regret. The farm mornings with my dad, the rushed crochet sessions with my niece, the quiet laughter when my partner finally defeated an annoying boss in a video game. Those details are my new currency. Recovery is unstylish in the popular imagination, but it is also honest. It trades spectacle for routine. It trades drama for meals you cook because you love the person who will eat with you. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret not confessing my love directly. My answer is complicated. There is a version of my life in which I asked him out, and perhaps he responded kindly, or perhaps not. But the truth is that the path I took, breaking, healing, rebuilding, taught me things that a short rejection never would have. It taught me the limits of dependency. It taught me how to be accountable to myself when everything else felt slippery. That knowledge is a hard currency. I would not trade it lightly. I sometimes imagine how different it might have been, but those might have beens are instructive rather than mournful now. I am careful with the words forgiveness and closure. They are often used as if they are final punctuation marks, but they are not. Forgiveness for me has meant letting go of the urge to have the other person validate my pain. Closure has been the quiet days where I feel strong enough to not look back. It does not mean I have to embrace every memory like a gift. It means I can see them without flinching. The past sometimes still stings. Sometimes the newsfeed will bring his picture and a small ache will pass through me. But those aches do not control the rhythm of my day. They are weather, not geography.
When I look back to the person who posted the confession 5 years ago, I think about how far she had to fall and how slowly she climbed back. I wish I could write to that girl and give her 3 things. You will survive this. The part of you that loves deeply is not broken. It just needs a new home. And don't be ashamed to ask for help when nights feel impossible. If I could press pause on someone's rush to confession and give them the patience I had to find, I would. There is no shame in slow work. In therapy, I learned that resilience is built in increments. Part of my recovery was practical, building schedules, setting boundaries, returning to classes with a different relationship to success. For a while, I wore my recovery like armor. Sober, productive, determined. That image can be deceiving. Recovery is not a linear climb, but a winding road with plateaus and occasional slips. The important thing is that you continue. I learned that setbacks are not proof you are failing. They are proof you are alive. The day I celebrated 3 years sober, I cried at dinner with friends who had stayed, and I realized my life had new scaffolding that could hold weight. I have moments of guilt still, for friends I lost, and the things I promised to do and never did. Guilt is a stubborn guest, but it taught me the value of making amends in small, earnest ways. Showing up on birthdays, returning calls, taking responsibility when I mess up. Those acts matter more than grand apologies. They show consistent care. And sometimes people will not accept your care. Some relationships are irreparable. You do what you can and then let the rest go. That process is brutal, but necessary. One of the more beautiful things that happened was noticing how my voice changed. Where I used to recast small kindnesses as signs of the future, I now can hear them as what they are, fleeting and kind. I can enjoy them without building a scaffolding of expectations on top. That liberation changed the way I date, the way I treat acquaintances, the way I hold my heart in public spaces. Dating became an exchange rather than a hunt. I stopped pretending I was always fine, and instead practiced saying plainly when I was not. There was a humbling season where I had to acknowledge the harm I had done to myself, to others, and make restitution where possible. I called people I'd ignored and listened without defense. I offered help without strings. I wrote apologies that did not ask for forgiveness, but recognized harm. Not every person took it back. Many did, and that made the process less lonely. The ones who left were sometimes the hardest to accept. Letting people go is not a failure. It's an acceptance of mutual truths. Not every bond is meant to survive every storm. When you recover, the world might not instantly change its opinion of you. Reputation lags behind character. People will sometimes test you. They will see if you return to old patterns. That's okay. Let them. The work is internal. Staying sober when the urge hits. Making small choices that align with your values. Saying no to events that will push you into old cycles. Over time, people notice. They see your consistency and begin to trust you again. That is how small acts of repair stack into a restored life. If you're listening and you're drowning in the ache of unrequited love, stop romanticizing the suffering. Suffering is not a badge of death. It's a signal that something needs changing. Healthy love is reciprocal. It's a space where both people grow. It does not feel like starvation, punctuated by tiny feasts. Seek help. Talk to a therapist. Tell a friend you trust. Preserve your evidence of recovery. Journal entries, moments of clarity. Keep the small ledger of wins you can point to when the nights get long. Sometimes I find myself wondering what my best friend believed. Did he ever think I was interested? Did he notice how I rehearsed my lines in the back of my head? He might not have. He might have been painfully socially oblivious in the kindest way, but social obliviousness is not an excuse for my own lack of boundaries. In the end, it doesn't matter much what he thought 5 years ago.
for months, they might have been nothing more than white space. If you interpret silence too often, you become the author of your own heartbreak. Finding someone who reciprocates changed my vocabulary. We say things like, we'll go slow, and let's put this calendar date in. And the mundanity of planning felt like safety. He proposed, or to be precise, he wants to propose, and I am allowing him the moment. And it felt like an ordinary miracle, a ritual that honored us, rather than a spectacle for validation. I treasure that ordinariness. I still write when nights are heavy. Writing is the place I bring the old pain to be looked at honestly, not to be used for drama, but to be examined and studied. Sometimes I reread the old posts I made 5 years ago and marvel at how raw I sounded. I am still human. I still ache sometimes. But I also have tools now. A therapist who sees patterns before I fall into them, a partner who offers steadiness, a life that will not evaporate with a slow reply. If you are in the middle of a story like mine, one last plea: be gentle with yourself and be brave enough to change the script. Don't make your life so contingent on another's glance that you forget how to look at yourself. Seek help. Tell the truth. Gather your small victories and trust that recovery will feel ordinary before it feels miraculous. My life is quieter and fuller. I am sober. I love someone who loves me back. I crochet tiny creatures for a niece, and I sleep through the night without clinging to a memory for safety. That is a revenge I will take gladly. The revenge of a life rebuilt and not wasted.